that's where it begins. Not with shouting, not with tears, but with laughter, light, careless laughter that skimmed across the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Orion Hotel and landed squarely on my chest. I stood there holding a porcelain plate I hadn't yet filled, the warmth of the buffet lights brushing my wrinkled hands, when my daughter-in-law's voice cut through the room like a blade wrapped in velvet. "Charity cases eat last," she said, smiling sweetly. Everyone laughed. And in that moment, something very old and very patient inside me finally woke up. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you who I am and why that sentence, spoken so casually, changed the course of that night and perhaps a few lives after it. My name is Emma, and I am 60 years old. By most measures, I am an unremarkable woman. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment with a balcony that catches the afternoon sun just right. I knit in the evenings. I wake early. I drink my tea without sugar. I have a soft spot for stray cats and an incurable habit of listening more than I speak. Once long ago, I was poor in ways that bruised the soul. And once long ago, I was rich in ways money can never imitate. That distinction matters. The company party was my son Daniel's idea. "Mom, you should come," he said over the phone, his voice carrying that careful brightness he used when he was worried I might say no. "It's the annual gala, big deal for the firm, lots of networking, and well, it would mean a lot to me." He hesitated before adding, "Sophia will be there too." "Sophia, my daughter-in-law." I agreed, because love sometimes means walking into rooms where you know you will be unwelcome. Daniel worked for a rapidly growing tech consulting company, sleek offices, ambitious slogans, the kind of place where people spoke about disruption as if it were a virtue in itself. Sophia worked there too, higher up than Daniel, and she wore her position the way some people wear diamonds, deliberately, visibly, and with the intention of being noticed. She had never liked me. I was too quiet, too old-fashioned, too inconvenient. And perhaps worst of all, I did not fit the image she wanted reflected back at her. The Grand Orion Hotel glittered that evening like a promise, marble floors, gold-trimmed mirrors, servers gliding past with trays of champagne flutes that chimed softly as they moved. I wore my best dress, a deep navy blue, simple cut, tailored years ago and carefully maintained. Around my neck was a small silver pendant, dull with age but precious beyond explanation. Daniel spotted me quickly and hurried over, relief softening his face. "You made it," he said, hugging me. "You look great, Mom." I smiled, "So do you." Sophia arrived moments later, her entrance timed with precision. She wore a crimson gown that hugged her figure and announced her presence before she spoke a word. Her smile, when she saw me, was flawless and empty. "Emma," she said, kissing the air near my cheek, "how nice to see you." "It's lovely to be here," I replied. She glanced at my dress, at my sensible shoes, then back to my face. "I'm sure it is." Daniel didn't notice, or pretended not to. The night unfolded as such nights always do. Speeches about growth, applause carefully calibrated, conversations that circled endlessly around achievements and ambitions. I listened, I observed, I recognized patterns I'd seen decades ago when I was younger and the world felt sharper. Then came dinner. The buffet stretched across the hall like a feast from a dream. Silver chafing dishes, carved meats, delicate pastries, labels written in elegant script. People gathered in clusters, plates in hand, chatting and laughing. I waited near the end as I always do, old habits from old hungers. That's when Sophia's voice rose, clear and amused. "Oh, don't worry," she said to a group near the front of the line. "Charity cases eat last." The words landed lightly, a joke, a harmless jab. Everyone laughed. Someone glanced at me, someone else smirked and looked away. Daniel froze. I felt the heat rise in my face, but I did not move. Sophia turned, finally meeting my eyes. For a split second something flickered there, surprise perhaps, or calculation. "Oh, Emma," she said, waving a manicured hand. "I was just kidding, you know how sensitive you are." I smiled. And that was when the real story began. You see, there was a time when charity case was the kindest label the world had for me. I was 27 when my husband died. A factory accident, faulty equipment, a report that went nowhere. I was left with a 4-year-old son, a stack of unpaid bills, and a grief so heavy it bent my spine. I worked 3 jobs, cleaned offices at night, sewed during the day, learned to stretch a pot of soup across a week. There were nights Daniel went to bed hungry so I could pretend I was. There were people who helped, quietly, without cameras, without applause. An old woman who slipped extra bread into my bag, a teacher who paid for Daniel's books, a stranger who once left an envelope of cash under my door and never returned. Charity saved us, but dignity kept us alive. I never forgot that. And I never forgot the faces of those who offered help without judgment. Back in the ballroom, I picked up my plate and stepped forward. Sophia watched me, her smile tight now. "Are you sure?" she said softly. "I wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable." "I'm quite comfortable," I replied. I served myself modest portions and took a seat at a nearby table. My hands were steady, my heart was not. People avoided my gaze, conversations resumed but quieter. Daniel sat beside me. "Mom," he whispered, "I'm so sorry." I patted his hand. "Eat your dinner." He looked like a boy again, caught between loyalty and fear. Sophia, meanwhile, was holding court, laughing, shining, winning. Or so she thought. After dessert, the CEO took the stage to announce a surprise segment of the evening. "As many of you know," he said, "our company prides itself on innovation, but also on giving back. Tonight, we're recognizing an individual whose quiet generosity has shaped more lives than most of us will ever know." The room hummed with curiosity. "This person asked to remain anonymous," he continued, "but agreed to be present." His gaze swept the room. Then it landed on me. "Emma," he said gently, "would you please join me?" The silence was total. I felt Sophia's stare like a physical weight. Daniel's hand tightened around mine. I stood. The walk to the stage felt long but not heavy. Each step seemed to peel away a layer of the past, revealing something steadier beneath. The CEO took my hand. "Many years ago," he said, "this woman established a small private fund dedicated to supporting widows and children affected by industrial accidents. No press, no branding, just help." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. That fund has since paid for education, medical care, housing, and legal support for hundreds of families. Quietly, consistently, for over 3 decades. Sophia's smile was gone. I looked out at the room, at the faces now turned toward me with new eyes. "Emma," the CEO said, "would you like to say a few words?" I leaned into the microphone. "My name is Emma," I said, my voice calm. "I am 60 years old, and once I was a charity case." A few people shifted uncomfortably. "I learned early that need is not a moral failure," I continued, "and that generosity does not make one superior, it makes one human." I glanced briefly at Sophia. Those who eat last often know how to share first. I stepped back. The applause was slow at first, then it grew, not thunderous, something better, sincere. Afterward, people approached me quietly, apologetically, gratefully. Sophia did not. She left early, her red dress a sharp streak against the neutral tones of the room. Daniel stayed with me. "I didn't know," he said, "about the fund, about any of it." I smiled. "You didn't need to." He looked toward the door Sophia had exited through. She was cruel. "Yes," I said, "and also afraid." "Of what?" "Of becoming what she mocks." Weeks later, Sophia came to my apartment. She stood awkwardly in the doorway, no makeup, no armor. "I owe you an apology," she said, "what I said, who I've been." I poured her tea. "Why now?" I asked. She hesitated, "Because I realized something that night. I've spent my life running from the idea of need, and you walked straight through it and came out strong." I nodded. "Pain teaches if we let it." She swallowed. "Will you ever forgive me?" I met her eyes. "I already have," I said, "but forgiveness doesn't erase lessons, it makes room for them." She cried then, quietly, honestly. Life did not become perfect after that. But it became truer. Sophia changed, slowly, unevenly, but genuinely. Daniel found his voice, and I continued my quiet work, unseen and content. Sometimes, when I think back to that night, I remember the laughter, and I remember how easily it turned to silence. Moral of the story: never measure a person's worth by where they stand in line or how loudly they laugh with power. Those you call charity cases may carry the deepest strength, the richest wisdom, and the greatest capacity for grace. True wealth is not what makes you superior, but what you choose to give when no one is watching.